Don't dislocate your shoulder
Holy
there.
smokes. Okay, we're now going to give 5 minutes to my friend from California, Tom McClintock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I agree with Mr. Walker that we are perhaps just a few years away from a fiscal crisis, the likes of which this country has never seen, and that few countries have ever survived. You know, we keep searching for structural reforms, but we ignore the most obvious answer. It's the word no. We beat our chests about the disastrous deficits, but we keep voting for hundreds of billions of dollars of wasteful grant programs, subsidies that distort the flow of capital, and we keep shoveling money at agencies whose authorizations expired years, sometimes decades ago. Here's the cold, hard truth of the matter. The federal government cannot raise or spend a single dollar unless the House of Representatives says that it can. That is our responsibility. It can't be doged and it can't be dodged. What I find supremely frustrating is that we have right now the ideal tools within our possession to bring our spending in line with our revenues, the budget resolution and the accompanying Reconciliation Act. Now, the Republican majority under Newt Gingrich used reconciliation by the book, and the result was 4 balanced budgets in a row that produced one of the greatest waves of prosperity our nation's ever seen. The Republican majority under Paul Ryan, on the other hand, squandered this authority to chase shiny political objects, repealing Obamacare, then tax reform, and because of the fiscal constraints of reconciliation, Obamacare ended up in this mangled mess that collapsed in the Senate, and the tax cuts had to be made temporary. And we seem to be poised to repeat the same mistakes that got us here, and that would be an immense national tragedy. Instead, we busy ourselves proposing long-term structural reforms. Well, this is akin to an emergency room physician treating a heart attack victim by lecturing him on the virtues of a long-term diet and exercise program. That's only going to matter once you've stopped the heart attack. I believe in a balanced budget amendment. I believe in an amendment giving the president line item veto authority. But I doubt that they can come in time to save our country from insolvency. We can and must do that this year. That means adopting a real budget that sets the lowest spending limits that we can muster and a real reconciliation act to implement those reductions. This budget committee is at the very heart of that process, and it had better rise to the occasion. Ms. Boccia, first, my thanks for your daily newsletters, one of the best that I see every day. Please keep it up. The ranking member noted the catastrophic scourge of COVID on the world. He neglected to mention $3.7 million in NIH grants that funded the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the most likely origin of COVID. And that was just a fraction of the hundreds of billions of dollars of grants that go out to every NGO under the sun every year that are rarely held accountable, or grants that rob one community to pay for local projects in another. It seems to me this committee ought to be looking at every one of these ludicrous expenditures. What's your view?
Thank you very much for being a loyal reader of the Debt Dispatch. Yes, I think we need to look under the hood of the federal budget and the numerous programs, thousands, in fact, of programs that Congress continues to fund without taking a close look at them. As you mentioned, there are many expired or unauthorized programs that Congress should review, and we may find there's a tremendous amount of duplication, inefficiency, and waste that the federal government could cut. And I thank you for bringing to light particular examples of this, but I also need to highlight that just addressing the discretionary spending and those grant programs is not going to stabilize our spending trajectory or stabilize the debt, since it's primarily driven by healthcare costs, interest on the debt,
and particularly entitlement spending. Phil Graham's pointed out that 72% of our unobligated general revenues are going to entitlement spending. Shouldn't we put a strict work requirement back in all of those entitlement programs for able-bodied adults?
So work requirements can work for Medicaid, food stamps, and other means-tested benefits. they are a good idea, and it's something that Congress should absolutely take a look at in reconciliation next year to
We need
ensure
do
that
more
the
than
tax
take a
cuts are
look at
offset.
it. We need to do it, and we need to do it now. You mentioned all of the structural reforms and the unauthorized spending. Since 1836, the House rules prohibit any appropriation unless authorized by law. And yet we suspend that rule every year, and then we shovel $500 billion at these agencies whose authorizations expired years ago. Shouldn't we enforce that rule, that existing rule, and require an agency-by-agency review of these expired federal programs?
Yes, Congress has suspended too many good rules, such as the pay-go rule, which I fear they may suspend again next year. I hope I'm wrong about this. As also, they have suspended the debt limit, which will return with a vengeance in January of 2025. And Congress should adopt a credible fiscal plan to stabilize our debt before raising the debt limit again. And certainly, they should not suspend it, which is basically a borrow as much as you need waiver and no limit.
The gentleman's time's expired, and we now